Today's project is going to be a watercolor wash. With a large image like this, sometimes you just don't want to take the time to color in all the detail of the stamp itself, and so we're just going to wash on some color in the background. I'm going to make the project today on watercolor paper. Stampin' Up! Does sell this. Stampin' Up! Inks are water soluble, perfect for this technique. You need paintbrushes to apply the ink. Stampin' Up! Does sell these watercolor pens. They come as a 3-pack with 2 different sizes for the brush, the pointy brush end. And look at this awesome wide brush, which is just perfect for this watercolor wash technique. And then you're also going to need some spritzers because the ink will flow a lot more nicely across the paper if the paper's wet. And Stampin' Up! Sells the spritzers in a 2-pack. And you make less mess if you have a water-resistant surface, so I'm going to use my silicone craft mat, also sold by Stampin' Up! The watercolor paper comes as 10 sheets to a pack, and they are 5 by 7. So for my project, I'm just going to cut this thing in half to give me 3.5 and trim it up to make a proportionally sized piece for the front of the card. Cut off this little piece because I wanted this to have the same size margins all the way around when I mount it on a standard size card sheet. So now it's 4 3/4 by 3.5. The Stampin' Up! Ink pads are designed to use as an ink palette. All I have to do is squeeze them hard to transfer some of the ink to the inside of the lid here. If that didn't transfer enough ink, if I had a really large project and I wanted lots of ink, I could always come in with my re-inkers and add just a drop or 2 in the center of the lid. And of course, since it's the same color, it just works perfectly. In order to not have this ink be too dark on my project, I am going to water it down a bit. I can do that by just using an eyedropper, adding a little bit of water, or I can come back with my spritzer and just add a little bit. And this ink will spread across the paper much more nicely if the paper is wet. So a mister of some sort, something that you can use to get your paper wet to start with. And I like to get it wet on both sides. Then I lay it on my water-resistant surface. Now, for these things, you can use any old paintbrush that you have. Then you're dipping it into a glass of water. But if you don't want to risk the spilling of a glass of water on your work surface, then these watercolor pens, watercolor brushes that have water, a barrel for the water, are really nice. They work like a Coleman lantern for those of you who are campers. It's got the word push right here on the side. You probably can't read that, but maybe you can see that it's flat on the 2 sides. And then what I'm doing is I'm priming it. So I'm squeezing, which puts a little bit of air into the barrel, and then that adds pressure in the barrel to start the water moving down to the end. So the water will fill this well down here on the bottom, and then it will just slowly, by pressure, be heading out the ends of the bristles. I'm moving it like this across my hand until I can see that it's wet or feel that it's wet, and then it will be ready to go. One more thing, I do want to have a paper towel ready. So I'm going to start at the bottom. I'm just going to pull up some of that ink and go nice and dark down at the bottom and just swish it across. A watercolor wash, and I'm going to go lighter as I head up the paper. This is the area that my flowers are going to be on. If you remember from the sample I showed you in the beginning, it was a floral pattern. So I'm kind of going greenish on the bottom. And now here's where I'm using that paper towel, because now I'm just swishing to get the green out so that I can use my brush in the next color. And again, I'm going to come dark from the top down. Okay, that's all there is to creating a watercolor wash. I'm going to clean the brush. Now this paper is wet and I can't use it. I can't stamp on it until it's dry. So I either have to let this set or I have to go hit it with my heat gun. All right, here's the image that you just saw me make. Now I'm ready to stamp my image. So quick reminder about inks. You saw me use the Stampin' Up! Regular color inks. These are water soluble. If I had stamped my image ahead of time, I would have had to have done it in StazOn ink, because StazOn is not water soluble, and so you need something that won't bleed when you go over it with watercolor inks. Now that I've got this dry and I've already applied my water and it's not going to get wet again, I'm just going to use my Memento ink to stamp it. The reason I'm doing this with my Stamparatus, with my stamp positioning tool, is that with a large image like this, you're never quite sure that you're going to get full coverage, and so you may need to come back and stamp a second time, and you need that paper to be in exactly the right spot. See, I definitely needed more ink. Okay, that looks pretty good. All right, we're ready to start assembling our card. I decided to put this on a black frame because I thought that would help to bring out the black that was in the card, the stamping. That's all I would do, is go around the edges, but since there's a little bit of curl to this, I'm actually going to also go down the center of this just to keep it flat on the black. Don't you just love the pop of the black against the white with those bright, fresh colors? And the green and purple is such a pretty combination. All right, now this needs a sentiment, and I'm set up here to put on a sentiment that comes from the Dragonfly stamp set. So I'm using this one right here that says, "Thank you for your kindness." And I don't know about you, but I save all my scraps. So I've got a 1/2 inch strip of silver foil and a little piece of black, and I'm just going to use that to embellish my sentiment. This is going to be very simple. So I just cut a straight edge there to go with the edge of the card. And now I'm going to come back from that point, and I'm just going to draw a diagonal. So I'm going to lay the point in the cutting track, and then I'm just going to be able to cut right along that edge. There's my sentiment. All right, I would like this to be raised up a little bit just to help set it off. I'm going to get a little bit of shine on here. I'm going to use my Wink of Stella, and I'm going to add some rhinestones. Wink of Stella to the petals. I'm doing the same thing to the Wink of Stella that I did to my water pens, my water painters. I'm squeezing to build up pressure in the barrel here to send that fluid out the brush tip. So I've done just this side of the flower. Can you see that sparkle on there? All right, I need to do all the flowers. Okay, this Wink of Stella, it adds a really subtle touch. It's a very subtle touch, but oh my, in real life, it just catches the eye. You get all that little bit of sparkle. I'm going to add a few rhinestones too. I just placed on 3, and I've placed them close to the sentiment so it kind of draws your eye in to see this the sentiment. So this was the sample that I showed you in the beginning. This one only has the black strip down here and no rhinestones and no Wink of Stella. This one we stepped up a little bit by adding that silver foil underneath, by adding the rhinestones and the Wink of Stella sparkle on the flowers. So if you liked this project and you'd like to see more like this, make sure that you have subscribed and do whatever it is to ring the bell so that you get notifications when I post more projects like this. And if you need any of the supplies to make something similar, I will put a link to the water brushes and the spritzer and the watercolor paper and the silver foil and the stamp set. I'll just put a link to all of that in the description. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time. This is Katie Johnson. Bye.